what if the greatest knowledge humanity ever lost wasn't really lost at all, but just waiting to be read? When we think of lost libraries like Alexandria, we see them as these tragic final endings. But what we're finding out today is that they might actually be just the beginning, holding blueprints that could totally reshape our future. And look, this isn't just some dusty ancient history. This quote, it comes from the founder of the Internet Archive, right after a recent lawsuit forced them to delete 500,000 digital books. The threat of losing our collective knowledge is just as real today as it was thousands of years ago. And that really sets the stakes for everything we're about to explore. But what if our whole idea of loss is just incomplete? There's this new concept that's changing everything, latency. The idea is that knowledge isn't always destroyed for good. Sometimes it's just lying dormant, waiting for the right moment and the right tools to be woken up. So you gotta understand, this is a huge shift in how we think. We're moving away from seeing knowledge as either saved or destroyed. Now we understand it can exist in this third state, latent, hidden inside a lump of charcoal or scraped off a piece of parchment. It's not gone, it's just waiting. Okay, so if this knowledge is just sleeping, how in the world do we wake it up? Well, this brings us to the resurrection machine, where we're going to see how an incredible combination of physics and artificial intelligence is literally reading the unreadable. Our story kicks off right here, at the Villa of the Papyri in Herculaneum. Imagine an entire library flash-cooked by Mount Vesuvius into solid chunks of carbon. For centuries, these things were just charcoal briquettes. If you even tried to open one, it would crumble into dust. They were the ultimate latent text, a library that existed but was completely impossible to read. So this is the how. It's a mind-blowing process called virtual unwrapping. First, they hit the carbonized lump with powerful X-rays to create a 3D scan of the whole thing. Then an AI gets to work, painstakingly separating each compressed layer inside the computer. And here's where the magic happens. Step 3. A machine learning model has been trained to spot the microscopic texture, this kind of crackle that the carbon-based ink left on the carbonized papyrus fibers. It's literally making the invisible visible. And the results? They are absolutely flooring scholars. This quote really captures that sense of complete astonishment. We are living through a moment where texts that have been silent for 2,000 years are finally starting to speak again. It's a genuine revolution in how we access the past. So we've seen the incredible how, but what are these resurrected texts actually telling us? Well, the answers are rewriting history and providing some blueprints for today that are surprisingly relevant. Let's look at another kind of latency, the palimpsest. This right here is the Archimedes palimpsest. So back in the 13th century, a monk needed some parchment. He grabs a 10th century copy of works by Archimedes, scrapes all the ink off, and writes a prayer book right over it. For 700 years, the genius of Archimedes was literally hiding underneath a hymn. And what did we find hidden there? This number, 17,152. It comes from a lost work called the Stomachion. It's the number of ways a 14-piece puzzle can be arranged into a perfect square. This wasn't just some ancient board game. This was Archimedes inventing combinatorics, a field of math that is absolutely essential for modern computing. And that wasn't all. The palimpsest also gave us the method, where Archimedes was already using the concept of infinity, basically getting a head start on calculus 2,000 years early. And it wasn't just science. It also had lost speeches by Hyperides, a key figure in Athenian democracy, giving us brand new insights into how the world's very first democracy actually worked. Okay, let's jump back to those carbonized scrolls from Vesuvius. The Vesuvius Challenge has revealed the first author from the ashes, a guy named Philodemus, an Epicurean philosopher who seems to have been the philosopher in residence at this Roman villa. So what's he talking about? Just life's big questions. In this unbelievable passage, read for the first time in 2 millennia, Philodemus is discussing pleasure, scarcity, and whether rare things are actually better than abundant ones. He then seems to throw some serious shade at his rivals, probably the Stoics, for having, quote, nothing to say about pleasure. This is a 2,000-year-old philosophical beef that feels like it could be a blog post from last week. And this is where he becomes so relevant. In another recovered work, On the Good King, Philodemus outlines a model of leadership that's a stunning alternative to the typical Roman ideal. Instead of ruling by fear and rigid duty, he argues for a therapeutic approach based on benevolence, emotional constancy, and social harmony. This is a model that speaks directly to our modern debates about what makes a leader effective and ethical. But it's not all about high-tech machines resurrecting the past. Sometimes it all comes down to sheer human courage. So let's turn to a different kind of library and a very different kind of rescue mission. These are the Timbuktu manuscripts, a huge collection of knowledge on everything from astronomy to human rights. Now, the key to this collection's survival was its structure. It wasn't in one big, vulnerable library. For centuries, it was decentralized, protected, and passed down within private family homes. And that structure would turn out to be its salvation. Because in 2012, when extremist forces occupied Timbuktu and started destroying cultural heritage, a network of what some has called badass librarians sprang into action. Led by this guy, Abdelkader Haidara, they organized a secret operation, smuggling over 350,000 manuscripts out of the city by any means necessary. It's just an incredible story of resilience and a powerful lesson in why decentralization matters. So, what do all these stories of carbonized scrolls, scraped parchments, and smuggled manuscripts mean for us right now? They come with a final and pretty urgent warning for our own digital age. Here's the crucial point. We are living in what experts call a digital dark age. I mean, just look at this. We create an unimaginable amount of information, but the amount we reliably preserve is frighteningly small. Our digital memory is incredibly vast, but it's also incredibly fragile. The threats today aren't fires or invaders anymore, they're silent killers. Things like bit rot, where data just decays on a server, or format obsolescence, where a file from 20 years ago can't even be opened by modern software. And as we saw at the very beginning, there's legal erasure, the modern version of book burning, where a lawsuit can wipe out an entire library overnight. This leads to a profound and honestly a deeply unsettling question. With all our phones and servers and clouds, we are, without a doubt, the most recorded civilization in history. But because of how fragile all those records are we also at risk of becoming the most forgettable? But the stories of Herculaneum, Archimedes, and Timbuktu, they show us it doesn't have to be this way. They teach us that knowledge can survive, that latency is not the same as loss, and that resilience comes from both technology and from human courage. The lessons from the past aren't just artifacts. As this quote suggests, they are active blueprints, ready to help us build a more resilient future. The blueprints are in our hands. The ink is still wet.